Thank you for joining us this morning, and I would implore you to stay with us till the end of the program because, as usual, we have a very interesting package for you. And we're going to start with saving the manufacturing sector. The new government comes in 9 days' time, and we are all adding our own 2 bits to what we think they should be looking at once they come in. And the manufacturing sector is one of such areas. This sector is seen as a key sector in the nation's quest for diversification away from oil dependency. Well, remember, they've been telling us for some time now that our oil wells will soon dry up. What happens to us after that? And remember, when Governor Duanga was leaving office, there was this huge book that was presented, and he actually brought one to our studio, Delta State After Oil. Many countries that live on oil are now thinking about years beyond oil because the oil isn't going to be there forever. So, should we be left behind? What's going to happen to our manufacturing sector?
Which we had before very viably.
I was just going to add that my dream is to see all those companies that jackpot to Ghana coming back. The Dunlops of this world, the Cadburys of this world. I mean, we had the most delicious biscuits in Nigeria once upon a time. Barakat biscuits. Many of you younger people will remember the cow biscuit.
Yes, yeah, I remember
And those were made in this country.
Even your guest is agreeing that
What happened to us? Well, these are questions we're going to be putting to our guests this morning. It's my pleasure to welcome the MD CEO of Coleman Technical Industries Limited, who's also the chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Ogun State, Mr. George Onofowoko. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us via Zoom is a chartered accountant, Dr. Olubenga Adeoye. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. We're so used to having you in the studio with us. This is unusual.
And strange.
Yes. A call to service in Egbaland.
Okay. Keep the flag flying.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Onofowoko, like I said at the beginning in my opening, my dream is to see all those factories reopened. Apart from everything else, it will also provide employment. Where are your thoughts regarding the manufacturing sector once this new government comes in?
I think for me, we have to look at it in 2 ways. First, we've got it wrong from, I'll say, the 70s till and I think democracy brought something else into the picture, which is for us to review a lot of things and to have a say in what we're doing. And the more say we had, the more review of the situation. If you look at doing the democratic since 1999, I think we've seen some improvement in the manufacturing sector compared to pre-1999.
Please explain that.
Yes, we have. We have to be fair. If you look at it, that just as you've just said earlier, it's not only the biscuits. Yeah, apart from the Dunlops, you have all the Odutola-based companies, the tires, the glasses, the mirrors that we're doing in Nigeria,
the car batteries,
the upholstery that was being done. All that died between the 70s and the early 80s. Today, what we're having is a resurgence of manufacturing because there was a refocus, a deliberate refocus into manufacturing, especially in the last 10 to 15 years. Take post or Sanusi period, Soludo, I'll say from Soludo's period, the whole economy was focused on both fiscal and monetary policy, on incentivizing the manufacturing sector. We didn't have lower interest rates until this deliberate intervention, I'll call it, and they called it that. And that started seeing some improvement. Are we there yet? No. Are we near where we were before? No. Do we need to go further than this? A lot more, because the sector still accounts for majority of the employment in terms of creating both micro, small, SME, medium scale, and large scale. We account for majority of the employment. And if you want to increase that, the government has to focus, every government had to focus on the manufacturing sector. But going forward, where does this new government have to focus on?
We'll get to that,
Yes.
Mr. Onofo-Okon. But let's take the opening comments of Mr. Adeoye as well. As far as Mr. Onofo-Okon is concerned, Dr. Adeoye, we have made progress in the manufacturing sector. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the challenge we've had in the last decade, or maybe 20 years, has been the problem of ease of doing business. So many manufacturers has given up on the government in terms of what government ought to do to ease business. In terms of, let's say, power, good roads. And so everyone resorted into solving your problem by yourself. But despite that, you are now faced with the problem of ease of doing business. And you can ask Coleman sitting down right there to transport cable from here to Kano is a problem. To move materials for manufacturing. One time I was dealing with soya beans to Apple and Pears. To move soya beans from the north to Ogun State was a problem, because you are going to meet retinue of barriers on the way, and you are going to pay money. And so a lot of people are giving up, not because they are not finding personal solution to manufacturing, but they are faced with the problem of ease of doing business. So that's very key.
Well, that's quite instructive, but let me come back to you, Mr. Onofo-Okon. You are in the sector. You are chairman of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria in Ogun State, so you are able to see things beyond your own company, beyond your own sector of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, because I know that you have different sectors, paint sector, agricultural sector, and all those things within the same association. What have we lost in the past 30 to 40 years in terms of manufacturing? I ask that advisedly. If we don't know what the problem was, dealing with it, or rather understanding it from the perspective of government, whatever government wants to do, people will not understand. As far as they're concerned, it's another white elephant project. So if we have an understanding of where we are coming from, and we're trying to build back to where we are coming from, perhaps it'll make some sense. Alara was citing some industries. I remember Peugeot. I think it was in 1975 that the head of state at the time, Govt, opened, I think it was a Kaduna plant. And we had more than that. We had in Anambra State, we had in Ibadan, we had car manufacturing plants all over the nation, various kinds. She talked about the tires and all those things. We had textile manufacturing that was very, NTM was very prominent on Obakran Road. What have we lost? Is it just the investments that we lost, or just the employment? What have we lost, and how do we get them back?
If we go from there, we've lost too much. Because you just mentioned textile. At a point, textile was the biggest employer of labor on its own in Nigeria, as you mentioned. They had the biggest union, they had the biggest labor force, and Nigeria employed the biggest labor in terms of textile in Nigeria. All those companies are technically more or less gone moribund and died. We've lost. If we take it from the magnitude of what we've lost in 40 years, I think all of us we can't finish the whole day talking about it. It's unfortunate. And majority of the losses came from very, very poor fiscal policies. The reversal in some decisions that literally go from protecting an industry to literally killing it overnight because of singular selfish interests. Let's be blunt about it. It just means maybe one person is being protected over a magnitude of numbers. And because you want to see a gain either in an import-related transaction, someone literally changes fiscal policy to literally make one person or a few people very happy. They make their money and the rest of the industry goes comatose. And we got it horribly wrong with so many industries. Now, unfortunately, in those days, we had no say. All these industries existed in military times. A lot of them actually came out in military times, but they also died in military times, and which meant singular decisions that literally affected lives were not deliberated on or discussed in the magnitude at which we do today under its democratic rule. Good or bad, we all have a say. Whether they like to hear it or not, we have a say. Each individual has the rights to talk. We didn't have that at that time. So decisions that adversely affected us, even the manufacturing sector, no matter how much noise we made, it just didn't work.
Well, that's not to say that it wasn't under the same military that we had. It was in the 60s that we started having military governments. It was in those 60s that we were having the pyramids in the Kano, the cocoa plantations in the south, in the southwest, the palm oil and the rest of them, coal and also those things in the east. So they did well in those days under the military governments of the day. So what happened?
One person's decision reverses one other person's decision and all of us have no say. But the reality is we've agreed it's gone horribly wrong over 40 years. But we need, it's over 200 million people. You need to create employment. You need to actually create capacity of consumption. And a lot of it has to deal with, we need to find, as you said earlier, alternatives to this oil. And we cannot build this country without building the manufacturing sector, which is processing. Even if you do, we're too much, you see, Africa has a problem, which Nigeria has. We're a raw material dependent country without processing. We sell the basic raw material and we buy the added value back. There's no way I can sell you crude oil and buy back petrol and you're paying the same price. There's no way I can sell you cashew or even sell you lead or any type of ore in Nigeria and buy back the finished product.
This is the most painful for me.
Cocoa. It's sad. For me, cocoa was something we ignored. The same way we focused on rice. I could not understand why we lost focus on cocoa. That was and has always been one of the biggest export generator for Nigeria. And we focused on rice for the past 15, 20 years, and everybody totally forgot what actually makes FX inside this whole agricultural chain.
Forgetting, my apologies for butting in, forgetting that it was cocoa that brought in the first TV station into Nigeria.
Indeed.
Cocoa House in Ibadan, how did it exist?
Still there.
It's still there. So we need to, and today we need to have added value. Processing of this cocoa into cocoa powder, into chocolates, and for export, rather than cocoa seeds that we pack into containers and we ship out.
I'll come back to you, Dr. Adeoye, but you know, there's something Dr. Adeoye spoke about the other time that I would like you to speak to as chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria in Ogun State. He talked about ease of doing business. And we've had conversations around this productive capacity of Nigeria, turning raw materials into, putting in the work, so to speak, in country as opposed to exporting them. In response to some of the issues he raised about the ease of doing business, the understanding we had was that the federal government under the vice president's office was doing a lot in that regard, giving annual awards and all of that to those who have helped to ensure that those ease of doing business indexes are grown. What can you say to that?
Executive Order 3, Executive Order 5. it's good to write a very fantastic executive orders. The reality is what is happening in real terms. What Dr. Adeoye says is very true. I'm a manufacturer. As he says, moving goods from here to Kano, is it that easy? There's a JTF, Joint Tax Board. You can't even move goods from Ogun State to Kano, and you won't have each state asking you all different type of haulage. When you look at raw material movement in Nigeria,
which translates into,
it's increasing cost immediately. Food, raw material, we have them. Problem is, when you move it around this country, you change a price of X, which maybe you agree with transport should be X plus 10% or 20% to your doorstep. It's okay, that is good business. But when X turns to X times 5, X times 6, not because the raw material was not reasonable when you bought it, but between taking it from point A in Nigeria to point B, the amount of cost in between has turned X to X5. Then the raw material has changed in cost. And then eventually the cost goes up. Then we have a problem of inflation. Now, the reality is the ease of doing business in Nigeria vis-a-vis the port, vis-a-vis transportation, moving goods around, for any manufacturer is negative everywhere. Now, we need to change focus on what we mean by ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, I think we've mistaken the fact that the ability for me to register a company is not ease of doing business. Yeah. It's the ability for me to run that company successfully.
And profitably.
And profitably.
And sustainably.
That is ease of doing business.
Dr. Adeoye, would you also include in this ease of business matter such items as interest rates, access to funds,
Definitely.
Power supply?
Definitely.
Because it all adds up at the end of the day to how much you sell your product or produce for.
Let me say that forever, if we don't change or do something drastic about cost of fund, foreigners will continue to dominate our manufacturing sector. And I'll give you an example. In the US, interest rate is about 5.5%. In China, the same thing. I kept asking people, why do we have many Chinese companies coming to Nigeria to produce and run their factory successfully? I'm a practitioner, I'm a chartered accountant in practice, and I have them as tax client and then audit client. And I kept wondering, why are they successful? I found out that one of the major factors is interest rate. Now, when you look at interest rate that we charge, and I kept telling people, I do not know why Emefiele remained the governor of Central Bank up to today. I can't fathom this. How can you go to sleep peacefully when banks are lending at 30%, sometimes 35%? Mr. Onofowokon is there, except for the intervention of Bank of Industry in their company, which may not even address all their needs. To borrow, to get money from the bank, the rate is not reasonable. So my conclusion around that, when you look at in the last 40, 20 years, is that government has behaved like predators to industries and manufacturers in Nigeria. And you know how predators work. If you go to into the bush where you have lions, antelopes, and others, they are there simply to, maltreat people who are investing. And they forget that the citizens are the employers of those that are in government. And that's why I say that your second topic on Sunrise today, which is institutional reform, we need to look into it. We need to look at the Federal Inland Revenue Services. We need to look at the Nigerian Customs Services. If you see how they talk to people who import materials into the country, and in some cases finished goods that we do not have, they treat them like trash. They forget that these are the employers of the people. We are the employers of Mr. President. from the beginning to the end. And so, how do you treat your employer? This Coleman, MD, sitting down there with you, is an employer of all the people in government. And until we change this psychology, NAFDAC need to come to realize that the people that are working, creating employment, they are the employer. That's how you are getting your salary, from the taxes that we pay. So government should stop behaving like predators. Predators don't feed the animals. If a lion walks into where you have antelope, all his attempt is to kill them. And that's why you have Michelin, Dunlop, all of them, and the textile companies you talk about in Ikeja, they left because the predators were so much on them, and when somebody wants to kill you, you just manage to escape after you've been hurt severally. We need to look at several factors. The governors in the respective states too, they need to have a special advisor on ease of doing business. The president need to have, the offices need to be around the country. And then we look into it. We need to call all the banks and sit them down. Why are you lending at 30%? What is your cost of fund? If you put 1 billion fixed deposit in a bank today, if you see the kind of interest they are going to give companies, they will confirm to you. It's ridiculous. So where is the cost coming from? And then the central bank will hold meetings. After that, you say you are increasing the rate again. This is not happening in other countries. And so I believe part of what the incoming administration needs to do is to look at our interest rate, to look at custom services, to look at SON, Standard Organization of Nigeria, those that are in the pharmaceutical and food industry. You look at NAFDAC. You cannot be treating people who are creating employment like you are a predator. You want to just kill them. That's exactly a major problem. When they give us relief on power, that is welcome. So we're not going to be buying diesel. But the things that you are providing for yourself and struggling to achieve, they are still disturbing you. I'll tell you something. A man is selling feed in Abeokuta. He sold feed to somebody, the person paid him, and then few months, police said they are investigating somebody who transferred to him. This man was locked up in Alagmo for 87,000 naira, money he received for goods sold. So we need to educate our police. We need to educate the judiciary on how to handle commercial transaction. A young person was taken from Ife for receiving 2,000 naira for selling food to somebody, and police can travel 4 days to go and take that man, sleep in the police station in Ife, bring to Lagos. These are total nonsense. That doesn't make sense. And this country will not move forward until government officials begin to see citizens as their employers.
Dr. Adeoye, you didn't quite tell us how come the Chinese businesses are able to set up their businesses and survive. They're operating within the same economy that is asking for 30% interest rate.
Okay, why they are succeeding? Privileged information that I have, I may not be able to disclose about our clients. But interest rate of 5%, and in fact, all the companies you find in Nigeria, 90% of them are supported by the Chinese government, from equipment to raw materials to credit facilities. In fact, when they want to come, they are encouraged to go set up. Now, how will you compare that with Coleman that is struggling for himself, begging Bank of Industry, asking you for cash flow projection, asking you for this analysis and that, but the company that is yet to start is getting grant from the government of his country, is getting facility at less than 5%. He needs equipment. They ship this down to this place. So they will be better than us. And when you look at their turnover, when you look at how they are performing and growing, it's clear that cost of fund and the support from their government is what is driving their businesses.
Well, Mr. Nofoko,
Instructive.
at least now we know. I'm not even going to ask you to respond to that because I can imagine what you will say. But There was something that you said the other time, and both of you have spoken to the ease of doing business. The reason that is important is that, yes, we are talking just about the manufacturing sector, but the value proposition, the value chain that a vibrant, virile, productive, and sustainable manufacturing sector can bring to Nigeria is almost unimaginable.
Correct.
We've talked about cocoa. What Nigeria did, even with the cocoa plantations in the southwest at the time, was mostly to export them. So just imagine that in the entire value chain, we could reproduce, we could add value to those things and export them, as opposed to buying
the raw material.
Your favorite dark chocolates and all those things in finished products, importing them from all over the place. For the incoming government, what are the must-do? Most of the time we talk about quick wins, but apparently, as you said, quick wins will give quick starts, but then quick deaths to some of these businesses.
Sure.
What are the critical things that need to be done in order for the manufacturing sector to get its spark on a sustainable level?
Some few things. One or two has been well detailed by Dr. Adeoye there. First and foremost, for us to do business, you need to raise capital. Now, I'm one of the big believers in DDI, domestic direct investment. We spend too much of our time as a country focusing on foreign direct investment.
Sorry, in your response, there's something that you said earlier that I want us to pay, that I would like you to pay attention to, which is, you said, ease of doing business is not just in starting and registering a business. Ease of doing business is in doing business sustainably and profitably and successfully.
Correct.
That's the angle of the question.
Okay, right. For us to achieve that, for any business, small or big, you must have a thought process that whatever I'm getting into is going to be viable. Now, for it to be viable, I need to be able to have that startup go from startup to full running to full potential of expanding, and to any business to see the creditors and the supply chain being credible enough to do business. Now, we as manufacturers, we look at the point of view of areas of FX. Quite a few things are also still raw material based imported. Some of them are local. We don't have, there's no country that has 100% local source of all its raw material. There's always going to be a mix. Now, the FX issue is very bad. The interest rate issues are very bad. I'll take the FX first. Now, we have a foreign exchange window that is like 3 or 4. I think number 3, NIFEX, INA window, then of course the parallel market. Gap between them, to me, doesn't make sense. It's too much gap. Now, we need to close the gap. Everybody agrees on that. We need to have a single window.
Yeah, the Vice President spoke to that also not too long ago.
We need to have a single window because in reality, the multiple windows gives room for, as it's always been said, rent seekers. I can buy $1 million, make 300 million in 1 hour. So what's the point of me manufacturing? There's no point. So it's better than even me putting the money at the bank. So the gap is too much. It needs to be narrowed. The certain incentives that they've tried to put in for exporters to actually come into the window with some certain incentives, 60 naira, 65 naira, 35 naira, all these 5 nairas and co, I think doesn't make adequate sense of bringing these people into the picture, because if I've already sold the differences, and in reality, and this is the truth, the gap in between it is even being played on by exporters, because some of the companies buy from exporters, and no exporter will sell you INA window. It's just official mumbo jumbo in my own saying, because I'm in business. I've processed something for export. I've sold it. Why would I come and sell it at 460 to you? When I'm paying the raw material, you buy cocoa. The cocoa guide locally, even in Ondo State, in Akure, knows that It's 700 and something naira to his cocoa. He knows the international price. So he's not going to sell you at 460 naira exchange rate for the raw material of the guy processing cocoa. It's not going to happen. So that's the reality. So there's no manufacturer that is buying raw material at below price level. He's buying raw materials locally at the real price. So he wants to put that as input price. Then you have to actually have cost of running. The cost interest rate disparity is terrible. Now, NPL today at 18%, I understand the economics of trying to edge inflation of 22% against an NPL. Nigeria is not Europe, for God's sake. We're not a developed country. The impact of interest rate instantaneously affects inflation in most developed world. We are not. We are comparing ourselves. And sometimes when they roll out these statistics at the NPR meetings, I find it funny. Why are you comparing statistics of America and Europe to Nigeria? We're a different country.
Some people say that the people who come up, most of the people who come up with these policies is because they are not themselves businessmen or manufacturers. Do you see anybody?
Majority are not, let's be sincere. But we are feeling the pinch. It's just said it. It's very true. NPL discounting rate at 18%, put a spread of 9%, which is most 8 to 9% is commercial spread rate. You're already talking 25 to 30 at corporate banking. At commercial, you're talking 28 to 35. Now, even banks, that some of them I speak to, are already afraid of non-performing loans happening. So if you're afraid of non-performing loan, that means you're not going to lend. You're not going to lend. So the manufacturers are struggling. And that's the reality. So you want people to run businesses, employ people, create employment, but you are not putting the thing in place for it to run.
What assignment does the government have on that?
Oh, they have a lot. First and foremost, we expect them to actually review the exchange rate policy of the government. It needs to be harmonized into a single digit, into a single window. We need the interest rate. Thank God to Bank of Industry. We all keep saying it, even Dr. Ade. If there's no Bank of Industry, I think a lot of us will be in trouble even more.
You guys will be unbanked.
We can't find the funding. Bank of Industry does funding in 7-8 years, and that has helped the industry. But we need to deepen DFIs in Nigeria. Bank of Agriculture, what is really, unfortunately.
How much can the Bank of Industry do?
God bless you. I was just about to say that. That is what I was saying next. It's one bank.
One bank.
In Nigeria that is government owned. How can only one bank be doing well?
Okay.
We have other ones that can help the industry. We need others to impact the same way one has done. Whatever we did right in BOI, can we not get them to?
Yeah.
So when you get these businesses getting the funding, what he said about China is true. I had one thing he didn't want to say. The crowdfunding pool in China is cheaper than that 5%. I'll tell you for a fact. Now, I'm always afraid when you have foreign Chinese company coming into my industry because I don't have the type of funding they get. What happens is that most of them have excessive funding lying in their bank that is not getting good interest rate. Wow. So what they do is crowd pool. I'll promise Alero here that I can give you another 3% better than the 1 or 2% you're getting from your bank. And you have maybe sitting $100 million in your bank. Of course, you give me $5 million. I prove my case in year 1, and I give you that money. I prove my case in year 2. If I come back to you in year 3 and say, can you add $10 million again to my business in Nigeria?
You don't thank you. You don't have to ask.
So the ability to create crowdfunding in China is enormous. We don't have that luck in Nigeria.
We're running out of time, and this is getting really interesting. Well, Dr. Ade, there's an aspect that Mr. Onofoko stated the other time, but I'll ask him a different question about personnel and capacity, when we return to him. Speak to the capacity of micro, small, and medium enterprises. There are those who speak to the fact that, on the one hand, they are strained, they are struggling. On the other hand, is a challenge they also have of business education or understanding how to run business sustainably. Many are said to run businesses for sustenance as opposed to sustainability. How do we traverse or transit from sustenance business to sustainable business for that business itself to outlive the owners. In this economy, what does the federal government, the incoming administration, need or have to do?
Very good question. I never knew I was going to come to channels this morning, and I had a discussion with my wife 2 days ago about some of the businesses we run. And I said to her, look at this young man, Chinese man, a client that is just 32 years old, 35. Look at what they are doing. And my wife made a statement, and she said, look, they were taught from their primary school. Wow. So the problem we have in Nigeria is that our curriculum is zero level about business. Yeah. How can you send somebody to primary, to secondary, and to university, and they don't even have an idea of how to run business? If you really want sustainable development, you need to educate the people, give them proper education. Work ethics is not there. People who are running businesses who don't even know how to keep records. I've given you an example about somebody doing legitimate business. You sold food. Another person says investigating that you received money somewhere. This is not going to happen in other countries. So we need education for our people. Police need to be educated. In fact, government must declare a state of emergency on the economy and manufacturing sector. Now, the small and medium scale enterprises, you've rightly said, Ayo, that they are doing business just to be sustained, not for sustainability. And so a few of them, they will run these businesses for a while, and the next few months is Japa syndrome that you're going to experience with them, because the factors mitigating against their growth is so much and overwhelming that they cannot handle. And so, apart from the role of government, living like predators on businesses, government need to take action to do mass education for businessmen.
Well, Dr. Adeoye, there's perhaps a kind of spin-off. You talked about things that government needs to do and everything, and both of you have spoken to taxation. I saw one
I'm
video.
a tax expert.
I'm coming to that. Oh, good. So I saw a video recently of a haulage truck flipping on a video about 30 permits from one local government to the other within, I think, maybe about 4 or 5 states.
That's correct.
And 30. How? Okay, so someone watching us now just sent in a question. Can the National Assembly make laws criminalizing the taxation of goods as they are transported across the country? Can we have just 1 or 2 of those taxes as opposed to these 30?
But they still have to
can I
lose
shock
arms
you?
as they cross.
There is a law in place that stipulates taxes collectible by federal, state, and local government.
How many are those?
All the taxes you see around, they are completely outside the law of the country. And you know why? The governors, and I repeat, the governors, they allow this because it's food for the boys. They just look the other way. And that's why I said until they see themselves as employees of the people. Look at the permit. There is a truck in my office. If you check the envelope, it's as big as this. And then you are wondering, what is all this for? What value are you getting? Try to open a business. You will receive visitors from local government, from state. In fact, every ministry now is now revenue generating.
Dr. Adeoye, I think you have answered the question in a way. Perhaps what we now need to do is find a way, perhaps you also telling the federal government, you and Mr. Onofo, that look, you guys are going to have to find a way to ensure that these laws are enforced, not to impinge on the capacity of businesses to do business. But let me ask you, Mr. Onofo, there's also the question of capacity in country. capacity of personnel, capacity of experts, or capacity of people to deliver expertly, professionals, technicians, and all of those things. Especially at this time where we seem to be losing more people than we are gaining. So, speak to that. Even if all the policies are right, the government is doing the right thing, and all the incentives are there, we have more than one BOI in Nigeria. Capacity.
Capacity boils down to what Dr. Adeyoye says, education. But in manufacturing, training. Now, do we have the capacity to build on the training of the infrastructures we have in terms of the capacity of the people, the human capacity we have? I'm seriously, maybe I'm too passionate a Nigerian believer, because I believe it's not about the amount of expatriates you have or the amount of trainers that are not in country that you have. It's the amount of people in Nigeria we have to believe in. Because if you yourself as an individual don't believe a Nigerian can do it, end of story. So there's no point. Now, for me...
My apologies on that, but people are poor.
Many
people just want to make a living.
I agree.
Live better than other people. So
we need to stop being selfish. I'm sorry. We need to stop being selfish. We need to deliberately want to improve lives. Look, you shouldn't be in manufacturing if you are not wanting to not be selfish. If you want to be selfish, it's the wrong business to be in. You need to, because when you go to work and you see the number of people, when the government is saying 30,000 naira minimum wage, I don't know any manufacturer in Nigeria that would seriously pay anybody 30,000 and get them working. It would not work. The reality is you have to pay more. You have to do more incentive. You are your own hospital. You are the one providing HMO services for all your staff. You're providing staff bus. I had to buy 10 brand new staff buses for staff. Why? Because I worry about the 200, 250 naira they're spending going back and forth every time. So if we look at what we actually do, we do more social services than anything. It's a burden on most businesses. But invariably, if you get them to come, if you get them to work, they improve over time, they improve the pay. Now, the reality is, yes, we need to also, let's be fair, the expectations is high, even on anybody. Our indeliberate attitude to life is to automatically feel entitled. A guy works for you, he sees his boss driving a car. He feels overnight he needs to drive the car. He does not want to take the time to get there. The patience we have in Nigeria today is very minute, which is why the Japa syndrome is very bad. We need to deliberately educate our people. We need to deliberately send the signal that if the government wants to do it right, we need to tell the people that, look, the future is bright. If you don't sell a bright future, I can't be patient for it. That's the reality. You need to sell me what gives me patience. If you don't give me the vision of that business, or say, in the next 3 years, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, this period, this period. Now, for any individual that sees you ticking each one, they'll be patient. We need to buy patience, but we need the government to help buy the patience. You cannot tell someone because an industry is doing well. Today, for manufacturing, the beverages are doing very well. But overnight, someone wakes up and says, I need to increase excise duty. Is it going to help keep those people? Because they are increasing. Please, you need to see the numbers. We see the statistics for manufacturers. The statistics from the beverage industry today in Nigeria is fantastic. But it should not mean because they're growing massively, it should be the first place we go and tax to collect more money. Why don't we look at how do they even increase more and start exporting? They have not even got there yet, but we're already seeing opportunity. I agree with Dr. Adeyoye. The manufacturers were the predator is the government. We are the prey. So we need to change. They need to be deliberate in actually believing that they need to convert from themselves in their head that they're no more predators. We need to enable.
Dr. Adeyoye, you mentioned something earlier about the curriculum in the schools, how it is not meant to groom entrepreneurs. Do you see a rebirth of technical schools, for instance, being of any help everybody wants to work in a white-collar job, just being an office, pushing files. But that's not really what we need to be a manufacturing nation, is it?
Of course. Let me say that wearing tie on your neck does not actually make you wealthy. A lot of people need to know that. Plumber in the UK probably makes more money than some other white-collar job holders. So, for example, in my state, Ogun State, there is a technical school in a location called Olobe. I think maybe Samsung or some other guys from Korea brought equipment worth over $1 million to train people there. As I speak with you, they have not opened any of this equipment to do anything. One of my team members at a Bioeconomy Summit group was almost crying because he was part of those who facilitated this facility to come around. You talk about Argos welding, undersea welding. I'm using, Coleman as an example. Most of the people that they need to drive these companies in manufacturing sector, they are not people with PhD like Dr. Adeoye. You don't even need a degree for this manufacturing process, and you can earn more. I used to tell people that it's possible for my driver to earn more than some graduate in some offices. Yeah. Why? Based on job description. So, technical school, the government is paying no attention, and I'm talking all over the country. If you go to Ghana, a bricklayer laying bricks for you, you don't need to be there. I visited Accra one day, and I saw how these guys were working without supervision, and they were so concerned about precision. And you had the guy, hey, Charlie, shift 1 foot more, 1 centimeter. They were trained properly in technical school, the welders. But ask some people to do lintel of a house here, they would just go and put one small rod that the building will collapse. Most of the buildings that are collapsing in Lagos, how many times have you heard that from Ghana? Ghana, their structure would be like you are in the UK. That's why the white men are coming there to buy houses in dollars. So we need to revive our technical school. And I'm speaking to all the governors that have won either re-election or newly elected to revive our technical school. Let's build our labor together so that we can have people that we will send, bakers who bake bread, bakers who will put the right ingredients in the things that we eat so that we can have good health, mechanics that will fix the car properly and you will not have to return it after every 2 days. So these are the things we need. Okay. Fashion designers that will not fix clothes for you, and you will have to remove, the button will be removed on your way to the event.
Well, Dr. Adeoye, the message is taken. Come on, be nice. But Mr. Onofowoko, what will be your final words now? And even though we have just 1 minute, I'd like you to speak to your sector. Because, as he said, there are some people who, in the name of wanting to make profit and remain in business, they also compromise your sector and government in particular.
In 30 seconds.
Wow. I think for the manufacturers, what we need is government being listen. They should listen. They need to hear the manufacturers. They need to call MAN. They need to call all the the associations into the book and have an economic team that is thinking of Nigeria. I think we need to be positive, optimistic. We have a lot of they're going to make a lot of difficult decisions going forward. There's nobody that is blinded to that. But they need to soften those terrible and difficult decisions that have to be made. But they need to listen to the manufacturers, sustain those difficult decisions with incentive to balance their decision. If they don't, we will just be dealing with difficult decision and calamity at the end. That's the real way.
Dr. Adeoye, your final word?
The government has to face the reality and they need to become truthful and now declare a state of emergency on our economy and on manufacturing. And again, you cannot shave a man's head behind him. Call all the bankers, call the manufacturers, SMEs, and professionals together. Let's do a 7-page document and say, let's implement this for the next 3 years. We'll see how Nigeria will be transformed.
Dr. Olubenga Adeoye, Chartered Accountant, who joined us via Zoom. And we had in the studio Mr. George Onofowoko, MD, CEO, Coleman Technical Industries Limited, and also Chairman, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Ogun State Chapter. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to look at this very important topic with us this morning. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do stay with us.